Mark, to what extent did your weird life affect the weirdness of this book?
Well, my life, I don't know if I would call it weird, but I suppose from another person's perspective it was bizarre. It had an enormous influence, without a doubt.
In all the things I've read about you, you talk about your relationship with your sister, certainly your relationship with your father. You never talk about your mom.
My mother's a very special woman. She had, she's gone through an enormous amount of changes, and early on she was very much, obsessed with my father, with a certain lifestyle, and at the time of the divorce, which was in '84, she suffered a great deal, and I did not talk to my mother for probably 4 or 5 years after the divorce, nor did my sister. She, in essence, had a nervous breakdown, and my father was really, the way my father handled the divorce should have been on The Simpsons, because he did everything wrong. He immediately put the kids in between. He said, you talk to your mother about alimony, about the divorce, about this. You don't talk to your mother. You don't invite her here. And he was a very powerful man, had an enormous influence. And my mother...
You were terrified of him.
Yeah. I mean, I think my terror of him was also derived from my love for him.
When your father was diagnosed with cancer, you wrote a story, a long story, a novel.
Right. It was called Redwood. I wouldn't call it a novel. It was... a
really long short story about how you felt about your father.
Absolutely.
And what happened?
I wrote it on a Greyhound bus. 3 days, 3 nights solid. And my father had been admitted to the hospital with kidney failure, and he had recovered, had come home and was recuperating, and as it turned out his cancer would go into remission for a year and a half. And he became very curious about my trip, and I've been writing, and my sister was there, and so I presented him with this story. And I read parts of it, and it was a dedication to him. It was this raw desire to express the love I felt for my father. And he responded by saying, you should go get a job at the U.S. Postal Service. Art is absolutely useless.
But he was an artist.
Yeah, there was a lot of... he was a very competitive man. It's not a coincidence that both my sister and I started to succeed after he passed away.
Your sister is Poe, the rock artist.
She rocks.
She's a songwriter and singer and has written a companion work to House of Leaves.
Great word, actually. A lot of people want to say that it was based on House of Leaves or influenced by House of Leaves. It's definitely a companion work. She's a twin, in essence. And she would work on songs. I would listen to them while I was writing House of Leaves.
What does writing give you?
Writing is something that's innate in me. It's a desire to put pieces together that are outside of me. And it's a way of exploring the dimensions of this world. In some ways, the way a mathematician can reach the end of the universe without traveling there, using the language of numbers. There's a way to reach the ends of the heart and the soul by using words.
You say it's a way of organizing the things that are outside of yourself. But it's also a way of eliciting the stuff that's locked inside of you.
No, you're absolutely right. I mean, by taking what's inside and putting it outside to gain a perspective on it, to see it, and to then, in turn, push yourself further, your own interior dimensions.
This is the strangest, most exciting, graphically innovative piece of literature that's come out. Well, it really moves the genre forward. Let me hear your description of a story about a house that defies the laws of physics.
The story is about a family that moves into a small house in Virginia where they discover that the inside is bigger than the outside by only 1/4 of an inch. And yet that discrepancy begins to threaten everything in their family. The relationship between the man and the woman, between the children, and between the children and the parents.
The words are set, the type is set in a spiral that requires you to turn it around and around as you're reading, so you're drawn into this. And the chapters that are just hellfire fast,
Right.
there's one word on a page, and you're
Absolutely.
going, Sam.
Absolutely. So in 15 minutes, you can read 100 pages, and you'll feel it. You'll feel the density in it, of the book in your
It
hands.
physically speeds you up.
Absolutely.
Or stops you in your tracks.
Right. And it has a visceral effect on you.
And this came out of your own twisted mind?
You know, I'd like to say that I'm incredibly original, but I think my generation is saturated in these kind of signals. We're completely fluent in the grammar of image. And there's something incredibly heretical about this book. Old school Ivy League professors are going to say, no, it doesn't matter what font you're using. It doesn't matter, you know, how you position the words on the page. Language is language is language. Bullshit. Among
the most interesting aspects of the book is hundreds of pages of footnotes at the end. When I first picked it up, I thought, it's not really 734 pages. I don't have to read the footnotes. And then I started reading the footnotes, and they're part of the story, aren't they?
Absolutely.
You get drawn into this process. So you're expecting people to read and keep checking in the back for the footnote.
I think it's surprisingly easy for younger generations to read. We've been raised on multi-textual fields, whether it's in magazines or on the web. The idea that we're constantly footnoting or supplying additional sources and stories to an ongoing story is part of our idiom. And I think that's nice, you know, to see that kind of involvement in reading. And I think older people are a little afraid of it. They've been sort of, you know, they're looking at it from an academic point of view.
Linear.
And then in a very linear way, exactly. And then they suddenly realize, by God, wait a minute, the book can be read in a different way. It can be read backwards, forwards, upside down. It's a wonderful analog computer, if you will, and it has all sorts of possibilities.
Mark Danielewski, thank you.
Thank you very much.